My roommate helped me put my fitted sheet back on my bed and she did it so wildly. Anyway. Hello friends, my name is Emily, I'm the bi, and here are some books off of my bookshelf. I don't think you're ready because I am definitely not ready for the amount of books that are just hanging out on my May TBR. So I thought that I would do a chaos May TBR video because Megan thought it would be fun, and I agreed. So the first book is a carryover book from April that I'm buddy reading with Megan, which I maybe have talked about, I'm not sure. Who can remember? Time doesn't mean anything. Anyway, it's Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. The next set of books I am reading for a readathon, which I don't normally do, and it's frankly just because I get very distracted. And I have a partner that I live with, and we like to do stuff like cook and watch things and do all kinds of stuff that's not really conducive to just like taking 48 straight hours and just reading, which I would love to do, but my brain just can't do that. It just cannot function. However, I am participating in the Asian Readathon hosted by Cindy, which is a month long instead of a week or a weekend or 24 hours, which like, wow, stressful, but Asian Readathon is over an entire month. So I can definitely get on with that. The first book for Asian Readathon that I want to read is The Bride Test by Helen Wong. This is her second book. I think it's set in the same universe, but is not technically a sequel to The Kiss Quotient, which I really loved. I have already started it, but I only made it like 2 chapters in, and then I was like overwhelmed by all the other things I was doing, and I was like, I will save it for Asian Readathon. The next book I'm going to read for Asian Readathon is actually the group book, and I was planning on reading this book anyway. I had already borrowed it. I had big plans, which I will talk about in a second, for consuming the media of this book, and so it turned out to be favorable that it was the group book. And that book is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng, and this I am stoked about. It just got turned into a TV show, and I think it's actually all done airing, I want to say. But my friend, Jamie Loftus, who is a comedian, hosts the official companion podcast to the TV show, and I wanted to read the book so that I could then watch the TV show, so that I could then listen to her podcast, and now I can do it for Asian Readathon, so very exciting. Next on my Asian Readathon TBR is Anna K by Jenny Lee. This was my February pick for book of the month, and I was stoked about it then, I'm stoked about it now. I just haven't really had time because I'm planning on doing a video with this and another book on this TBR that I probably won't get to, but we'll talk about it in a minute. And I just haven't had time to read both of those books and make that video. So I've been saving it, and I figured that Asian Readathon is as good a time as any to read this book. And the last book that is on my Asian Readathon TBR is Love Boat Taipei, written by Abigail Hing Wen, and I have this digitally, so I will be reading it on my iPad. Hopefully I can get to it. You know? Again, this is a chaos TBR, so like, who fucking knows what's gonna happen? But those are all the books I'm trying to read for the Asian Readathon, and now let's just get to the mishmash of everything else I'm trying to read this month. Let's just get the Sierra Simone books out of the way first. So currently I'm reading The Awakening of Ivy Leavehold, which I have digitally. I haven't quite figured out what the series is. This and the London Lover series are, I think, her 2 earliest actual series, and they're both like late 1800s, early 1900s. I'm not really sure the time period, but it's like period piece erotica. I don't know what's going on. But on May 1st, and I've already bought it digitally, so it's gonna happen. It's gonna get read immediately. Harvest of Sighs, which is the 3rd book in the Thornchapel series by Sierra Simone, comes out, and I'm gonna fucking read that shit. I'm so stoked. So one of the other books I want to try to get read, and again, we'll see if it happens, is Undercover Bromance, the 2nd book in the Bromance Book Club series by Lisa K. Adams. I borrowed this from Patches, but I'm extremely excited. She, I think, did not like it, but I think I will, because part of the reason she didn't like it is she doesn't like the trope of enemies to lovers, and I fucking do. She also didn't like that book, so I think it's gonna be fine. She's actually more of a second chance romance person, and I am not, which was the trope in the Bromance Book Club, the 1st book, and I still liked that one quite a bit, but I think I'm actually gonna like this one more. Continuing on in the theme of books I've borrowed from Patches, I'm also going to read her April pick for Book of the Month, which was Valentine by Elizabeth Wetmore. This is about a Texas, yes, Odessa, Texas. It's the 70s. Oh, I thought it was way earlier than that. okay, I thought it was like gonna be like the 30s, but it's like an oil mining town and like stuff, man. She, I think, is going to put up a reading vlog of her reading this soon. I already put up my reading vlog of me reading Library of Legends, which I have given to her and she will be reading soon. The last book that I borrowed from Patches, I am stoked about. I tried very hard to get a Netgalley copy of this and just didn't, and I am sad about it, but Grady Hendrix is one of my favorite horror writers working right now who like specifically does horror stuff, and his new book, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, came out. Patches bought it, read it in a day, and then let me borrow it. So I need to read this month because I need to give it back to her so she can send it to her mom before the post office stops working. America is on fire, guys. It's wild and hurtful and not good. Anyway, I'm very excited about this book. So I'm just out here living, trying to get Halloween in the middle of fucking summer. By the way, it's extremely hot in LA and it's not cute because no one can leave or do anything. And it's just a nightmare. The last two books on my TBR are total wild cards because if I'm honest, they're probably not going to get read because I don't need to read them right now. I can read them in June or never because life is trash and I'm sure I will have other things I need to read in June, but it's fine. The first of them is Cecily von Ziegskar's, I don't know how to say her name. Was that right? It's a mystery. Anyway, it's Gossip Girl, just the first one. So this is the book that I'm gonna read in tandem for a video with Anna K by Jenny Lee, which I will be reading this month because a lot of people have compared Anna K to Gossip Girl, and so I wanted to make a video as a former Gossip Girl stan, very light Gossip Girl stan in the back of my head, primal instincts, you know, and see if I actually think that they're similar at all, or if it's just like rich New York teenagers. Which like is a vibe, but like are they similar otherwise? That's the question I will hopefully be answering in that video whenever it happens. So the last book I want to read for a couple of reasons. It's a Star Trek novel that is a new adventure. It's not a story that's been told in the Star Trek universe, and got it because Leonard McCoy, aka Bones, who is my favorite Star Trek character, is kind of the POV main character of this book. It looks like it's sort of like a back and forth between when he was married and like about his married life and then his life now having joined Starfleet, and then his ex-wife kind of gets brought back into the present day because of an adventure that they go on. And it's Star Trek Shadows of the Sun by Michael Jan Friedman. So I got this, I think actually when I was hanging out with Patches the last time we hung out before we could never hang out ever again. And I got it at the Iliad in North Hollywood, which is one of my favorite used bookstores, especially in LA. And that day I think I actually got a couple of Star Trek books, but I very specifically, they have so many Star Trek paperbacks that I just want to lose my mind about it. But I specifically went on my phone and tried to find some McCoy-centric stories, and this was one of them, and I was able to find it. So I'm very excited about it. I want to read it. There's a couple of reasons. One is that I want to do a Star Trek rewatch and continuation because there's some Star Trek series I've never seen, and it's kind of shameful because it is my favorite thing in the whole world. I have a couple of ideas of different books that I want to write, and one of them is like a sci-fi romance. And while, you know, the Star Trek books don't really have a lot of like heavy romance stuff going on, the Star Trek world as far as world building and like how it functions and the nuances of how it functions as you get into more recent kind of adaptations or you know, tie-in books, which is what this is. They just create a world that is probably one of my favorite sci-fi worlds ever. I don't know what to tell you, Star Trek is good. Like, so I don't necessarily want to do an exact replica of the Star Trek world, but I would like to see how my favorite sci-fi world is kind of represented in actual like prose, because that's what I want to write next. I am also going to write a romance, so like, you know, gonna look at some romance novels. I need to read some sci-fi romance, but I don't have time for that right now, clearly. So I'll just stick to the sci-fi stuff. Plus it's about McCoy and he's the best. That's a Chaos TBR. I'm gonna die. Check back with me in a month and I'll tell you how I did. In actuality, I probably won't talk about it too much in depth until the end of June because of my quarterly wrap up. But what's wild though is all of these books will probably be in that wrap up. Just which month are they gonna be in? That's the real fucking question.